How's it going, guys? In this episode, we're doing some very important maintenance that you need to do on your Humvee. This is very important for any new Humvee owners, especially if you just bought a Humvee, you don't really know the history on it. And this is something you probably want to do like maybe once a year, once every 2 years. Just at least check them, make sure that the lock washers are on. But what we're going to be doing is we're changing the spindle nuts and the lock washers with all brand new parts. We're also using the Black Duck custom spindle nut socket to torque everything properly. And this is a very important tool to have if you're a Humvee owner. Oh shit, I almost just dropped it. Very important tool to have. So yeah, so what we're going to be doing is replacing the spindle nut and the lock washer. We're going to torque everything properly. I'll show you guys how to do that. We're also changing the gear oil in here, and then we're also going to change the, or not change it, but we're going to retorque the little bolt that goes right here that holds the whole CV shaft into the geared hub. So this whole process is very important because this right here is the only thing holding your whole spindle assembly in the geared hub. And if this comes off, and you're driving on the highway, your tire is gonna fall off. And you definitely don't want that. It's a high possibility that you could even flip this thing. So this is very important maintenance to do. And I highly recommend doing this, especially if you just bought a Humvee. Just peace of mind. You don't wanna endanger yourself, endanger the people that is driving with you or anybody else that's on the road. So let's go ahead and get into this. Alrighty guys, so I have the tire off already. How I have this set up right here is I have a jack stand kind of underneath the control arm, and I also have a jack right there too. I like to have 2 points of safety, so if the jack stand fails, at least the jack will hold it up. But as you can see over there, I also have the tire set up underneath the body of the truck, so just in case both of those things fail, the tire will at least hold it and I could get out from underneath it, but that's worst case scenario. So first things first, as you can see, the geared hub is a little bit rusty, a little bit dirty, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a steel brush. I'm going to clean some of that dirt off because you don't want any of that dirt and grime and stuff like that getting inside the geared hub. You don't want any contamination. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and clean this all up, and then we're going to open the cover, we're going to get in there, we're going to replace the spindle nut and all that stuff, and then after we put it all back together, we're going to probably pressure wash it all, make sure it's all clean, and then paint it. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and take these 4 bolts off that hold this cover on. This cover also connects to the steering arm. Behind this cover is where the spindle nut is. Alright, so before we actually start taking the back cover off, I'm gonna go ahead and drain all of the fluid, all the gear oil, and first I would take off the, or at least loosen the fill cover, the fill hole right here, before you actually start draining it, because if you drain it and can't get it back in, then there's a problem. So that's why I like to take the fill cover off first and make sure I can take that off. Alright, so set this aside. Now we're gonna go ahead and drain it. We're gonna take a 5/16 little Allen key socket, and on the bottom there is a little screw that needs to come out, and that's the drain. And it is already leaking because I kind of loosened the back cover beforehand. Here we go. Nice clean gear oil. We're gonna go ahead and change it anyways. And also inspect the magnet too, that's on the end of this little drain cover. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and remove this steering cover and kind of move it out of the way. You wipe it off real quick. Here we go. So now that's out of the way. now we have access to the spindle nut behind here. So first I just want to take a look at it and kind of give it a little inspection. Alright, so now that we have the back cover off, we could view the actual spindle nut, and we could see the 2 locking tabs that are already on there. I'm going to go ahead and take this all off, unbend these tabs right here, take the whole assembly off, and then we're going to install the new parts, the new washer that goes right here, the new lock washer, and then the new spindle nut. And then we're going to go through the torquing process. Alright, so now that we have the tabs of the lock washer unbent, we're going to use our socket from Black Dog Customs, which has these 2 little tabs right here that fit in the grooves of the actual spindle nut, and we're going to remove the spindle nut with this. So, put this on there, we'll line up those tabs into the grooves, and we might have to use a breaker bar or just something on the wheel studs to prevent the actual whole spindle from moving. So there we go. So now go ahead and take all this stuff off. Alright, so when we're loosening this, when we take this off, you kind of see that the bearing is able to move back and forth. So when we put the new spindle nut on, we're actually going to have to reseat this bearing. So to do that, we're going to tighten the new spindle nut to 40 foot-pounds, and we're going to rotate the entire spindle assembly 10 times clockwise and then 10 times counterclockwise. And that should seat the bearing properly. Then we'll loosen this off, the new spindle nut off a little bit, and then retorque it to 25 foot-pounds. And then it should be all good. Alright, so go ahead and remove the old spindle nut. There. Then we'll take the lock washer, and we'll take this other little washer shim thing that's behind that. So it's 3 pieces that we're changing out. Alright, so here is the new first washer. Then goes this lock washer right here with the locking tabs on it, and then the new spindle nut itself. Alright, so now we're going to torque this nut to 40 foot-pounds, rotate it 10 times clockwise, 10 times counterclockwise, loosen it, and then torque it to the final torque number of 25 foot-pounds. There we go, 40 foot-pounds. So now we're going to rotate this. We'll rotate it about 10 revolutions one way. So we're going to do 10 times counterclockwise. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now 10 times the other way. Alright, so now we want to back off the spindle nut a little bit, but we want to do it so that if you see the spindle droop at all, you need to redo this again. So you need to just loosen it just enough to retorque it to 25 foot-pounds, but not too much to where the spindle nut droops. And when it droops, it'll actually loosen up this bearing, and you'll have to redo that again. So just barely loosen it. Alright, so we just barely loosened it. We didn't see any droop at all. Now we're gonna reset our torque wrench just to 25 foot-pounds. There we go. 25 foot-pounds right there. And we could see that the two locking tabs perfectly line up with these grooves right there. So now what we're going to do is, it's very important that you have two of these locking tabs in the actual spindle nut. So we're going to hammer these two in there. This one's a little bit tricky. And they're good to go. So now let's just rotate the whole assembly once. Just take a look at everything. All looks good. Nice. So now we're gonna go clean off this face right here that the cover goes on. We'll clean off the face of the other cover, and we'll put some silicone on there. Put some blue Loctite on these bolts that go right here, and retorque them to 75 foot-pounds. So when you're cleaning this, you want to be very careful to not get anything on this bearing and all that stuff. So check it when you're done. Clean everything off that that you get on there. We just want to really carefully clean this face, and then we'll wipe off the surface with some brake cleaner. So what I like to do is spray a little bit of brake cleaner on a rag and wipe this all off. You don't want to spray brake cleaner directly on this, because then you might get some on the bearings. You don't want your bearings going dry. Even though we're going to be filling this back up, you also don't want that contamination of your gear oil. So just put it on a rag and wipe it. Alright, and then make sure there's no contamination on here. Wipe anything that you got on there off. And then we'll go ahead and give the same treatment to this cover. Nice. So now we'll go ahead and put some of that silicone sealant on there. You don't want to put too much, you just want to put just enough. Too much and it could squeeze out and get inside where your bearings are and stuff, and it just looks bad. So I like to smear it around with my finger too. Make sure it's all nice and even. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put this cover back on the back. Very carefully. Get it somewhat lined up. And then we're going to take the old bolts and put a dab of blue Loctite on them to keep them from moving. Oops, a little bit too much on that one. There we go. All right. right. Alrighty. So now, what we're gonna do is going to reinstall the good old drain plug on the bottom. I'm gonna make sure it's all wiped off. And I'm even gonna put just a little tiny dab of this silicone stuff on there. Just to make sure it seals. So a little tiny dab, and I'll wipe it on there. Wipe the bottom of this too. Alrighty, so we're gonna fill this up with some 80W90 gear oil, and it goes in right on this fill plug on the side. Pretty sure it takes like half a quart, but I'll just fill it to the bottom of this plug. Pretty sure it's half a quart. Alrighty, there we go. Yeah, it was just about half a quart, so maybe a little bit less. We're gonna go ahead, wipe out the threads, take a look at the fill plug. We're gonna go ahead and throw just a little tiny bit of this silicone on here again. Just the smallest bit. You don't want it hard to get off when you're trying to remove this plug next time. Just a smidge. Here we go. Thread this back in there. And the size of this is, I believe, a 1-inch. Yeah, I use a 1-inch wrench to get this off. She's a biggins. And you don't want to over tighten it. It has a little plastic washer behind it. So just get it nice and snug. There we go. Alright, almost there. So last thing we're going to do is... Alrighty, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to take this little plug out, this little cover, and we're going to check the torque of the bolt. It's one single bolt that holds the whole CV shaft into the geared hub. So we're going to check that. It should be about 37 foot-pounds. Jesus. I'm going to smack this around a little bit. There we go. Alright, looks like there's a little red RTV in there, orange RTV. Alright, so this is a 9/16 right there. So I'm just going to loosen this up and then retorque it to 37 foot-pounds. Gonna probably put a breaker bar on the lugs. Oops, wrong way. Okay, that's loose. Now go ahead and retorque that to 37. Okay, well, it's at least 37. Now we reinstall this cover. And there you go, guys. That's how to maintenance your geared hubs and stay safe while driving your Humvee. All I need to do is I'm going to paint this and replace that vent line. And should be all good after that. But we're making some progress on this truck. It's so close to being done. We just got a couple small things left. But mostly just maintenance stuff. We're going to be replacing, we're going to tighten up the whole steering. And some of the main issues with steering on these trucks is the actual pitman arm and the idle arm. So a lot of times those wear out and your steering is crappy. So probably next video we're going to be replacing those two components and testing out how nice the steering is after that. So we're going to go ahead and paint this Probably tomorrow I need to go pick up some paint. And then be one step closer to being done. Alrighty guys, thanks for watching. Hope this helped some of you guys. Want you guys to stay safe while driving your vehicles. And stay tuned for the next one, guys. See you later.